What if Yuji and Megumi decided to enter the Culling Games through the Sendai Colony instead of Yuta? What would happen? Who would they fight? And would they be able to come out on the other side alive? In this video, I will be tackling this hypothetical scenario and discussing Yuji and Megumi versus Sendai Colony. Before I get into how this hypothetical would play out, there are two major changes that I will be making in order for this scenario to work out as planned. The first is that instead of heading into Tokyo Colony 1 in order to fight Higuruma, Yuji and Megumi will be going into Sendai Colony. Their strength, techniques, and general knowledge will all be the same as it was in chapter 161, where they entered the barrier for the first time. If you want to justify their placement in Sendai Colony somehow, for the sake of simplicity, we'll just say that Yuta went into Tokyo Colony 1 in their stead in order to strong-arm Higuruma into giving them points. Considering that the only knowledge they have on him at this point in time is that he is strong and willing to kill, sending their heaviest hitter at him doesn't seem like such a bad idea. The first and most hopeful for our main characters is that Megumi is able to lay out some sort of truce or general diplomatic agreement that would convince the likes of either Ishigori, Uro, or maybe Druve to help them in the games in exchange for some value or information about the overarching idea of the Culling Games and how they work. Now, this scenario is technically possible, but based on what has been shown from the antagonistic players within Sendai, a truce would be very unlikely. For starters, it would be impossible for either of the two to reason with a cursed spirit like Kurushi, as it's shown no real sentience or desire for anything except iron. If the two even tried to approach it, they would be forced to fight, and as I'll explain later in the video, that would end horribly for them. When it comes to negotiating with Druve, the two might be forced to deal with his Shikigami before they could even get close enough to speak, and in the event that they do get to talk to him, I can't say that communications would go well because we have no real idea what type of person that he is. And when it comes to the likes of Uro and Ishigori, they seem too proud and eager respectively to make a truce with any sorcerer no matter what is offered. Uro would likely take it as an insult to even hint at the idea that she needs their help, and even bringing up the idea of teamwork might trigger her PTSD from being betrayed in her past life. The fact that the last group of people she worked with threw her under the bus probably would keep her from being super receptive to alliances, especially with random weak sorcerers. In any case, talking with her calmly without being significantly stronger than her is completely out of the picture in my mind. Finally, we have Ishigori, who surprisingly enough would probably be the most reasonable person to talk to, at least initially, if only due to the fact that I think he's much more level-headed outside of direct combat than Uro and Kurushi have shown themselves to be. That being said, Megumi and Yuji would definitely have to offer something insane to keep Ishigori's lust for an interesting battle at bay. I can see Megumi picking up on Ishigori's desire for a good fight pretty quickly, considering he's fought Sukuna before, and offering up a deal, more specifically a binding vow. In exchange for Ishigori helping them by giving him points and assisting them in taking down Uro and Kurushi, Megumi will have the strongest person on their side, Yuta Okkotsu, fight him in a one-on-one battle and give him the dessert that he yearns for. Depending on how patient of a person you interpret Ishigori to be when it comes to his dessert, he might accept the deal and not immediately attempt to kill them. Strong emphasis on the word might there. Megumi would have to successfully sell the idea that Yuta is so powerful that Ishigori will get all he wants in that fight and more, which if done properly could definitely trigger his childlike excitement for a fight and push him to agree to the deal. Hikari has shown that binding agreements like this are possible to work out even with hyper-aggressive, super strong fighters like Kashimo. So as long as the conditions are right, I can see this scenario playing out properly. If Megumi and Yuji are really desperate and what they're currently presenting to Ishigori isn't satisfactory, I could see them upping the ante on their end. In exchange for Ishigori's help, they would not only guarantee a fight with Yuta Okkotsu, but also a satiation of the hunger that Ishigori feels in his reincarnated life. If after fighting Yuta Okkotsu, he somehow doesn't feel like it was worth it, they would offer up their own lives as collateral. This would definitely be a dangerous and not optimal scenario for the two, but it would be one that they might be forced to make unless they want to fight against him right here and now. In the event that this happens, Megumi, Yuji, and Ishigori would face off against Kurushi, Uro, and Druve. Even with Ishigori's help, I can't see a scenario where Megumi and Yuji tangle with these special grade level fighters and come out mostly fine, but it's definitely the best thing these two could hope for. If you think that Ishigori would not go for their deal and would just prefer to fight the two sorcerers right then and there, that would lead us into scenario 2, the worst case for Megumi and Yuji. In this situation, Megumi would likely assume that because they're facing sorcerers from the past, they will be particularly aggressive and unable to be reasoned with. We see him in fact share this sentiment with Yuji back in chapter 161, so it makes sense for Megumi in this hypothetical scenario to keep that same idea. With that being the established mindset, Megumi and Yuji would have to go for points by either killing these sorcerers or beating them in combat and forcing them to hand over their points. Either way, Yuji and Megumi are absolutely fucked. Let's say, just for charity's sake, the two choose to attack a sorcerer at random and pick Druve. And also, let's say that Druve is just some pushover. Even though it's narratively implied that he's on a similar level to everyone else that Yuta fights due to him being part of the deadlock, let's just ignore all of that. Let's throw that all away, throw that in the garbage because he has no showings, and we'll say that Megumi does to Druve the same thing that Yuta did. Cut him in half with absolutely no damage and no fatigue on their end. Their first and honestly last problem after this arises as soon as Kurushi shows up. Now, I'd love to be able to pull out some crazy Yuji and Megumi scaling to get them past this cockroach curse spirit, but I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off. If Megumi and Yuji fought Kurushi, at least one of them would die. Neither of these two characters are equipped with the abilities to deal with him without some sort of major sacrifice on their end. Just to give you a bit of context, Kurushi was able to block multiple strikes from Yuta's blade and survive several attacks from a serious Yuta Okkotsu without being in danger of death immediately. This is unironically a better feat in and of itself than Yuji can muster in his fight with Yuta. On top of that, Kurushi put Yuta in a near-death position and was only defeated afterwards because Yuta has reverse curse technique and healed himself, something that neither Yuji nor Megumi possess. One hit from Kurushi's blade of life and death will tear through their flesh just like it did Yuta's, and if they sustain any damage from that curse tool at all, they will just die. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What this means is that these two characters are going up against someone fast enough to block attacks from Yuta and land blows on him, Yuta being someone who's at least relative to Yuji in speed, but also this curse spirit is someone who can heal from their attacks with ease and kill them even if one of its surprise attacks land. It's honestly likely that Kurushi solos both Yuji and Megumi at the same time, stopping their contribution in the Culling games before it even really starts. I could possibly see Yuji and or Megumi making a sacrifice play where one of them allows themselves to take the brunt of the damage in order to allow the other a clean shot on the cursed spirit's body. But even in this scenario, one of them would have to die or at least be on the very brink of death, which I couldn't imagine them allowing each other to do. But you know what? Fuck it. Let's say they somehow do beat Kurushi. Maybe Megumi uses a combination of Shikigami in order to keep him distracted with attacks while he and Yuji pile on combos like they did versus Awasaka. I don't think this would work because they don't really have the stats to pull something like that off, but let's give these two the benefit of the doubt and say that they can take Kurushi down with only minor injuries and even more minor amounts of fatigue. In the event that they do beat Kurushi and Ishigori or Uro pulls up on them, they both die, no questions asked. Both of these characters are strong enough to not only 1v1 Yuta and force him to heal numerous times, but they also have the durability to take point blank attacks from a fully unleashed Rika and Yuta without immediately dying or even being in danger of it. In Ishigori's case specifically, he can literally tank the force of his own Granite Blast, which outclasses anything Yuta has in his arsenal. The same arsenal, mind you, that Yuta didn't even take out to beat Yuji. While Megumi doesn't have this direct scaling to Yuta, he would not be in a much better position considering that his physical stats at best are relative to Yuji's and at worst are inferior, meaning he'd be vulnerable to every single one of their attacks as well. To quickly illustrate how fucked Yuji and Megumi are in this situation, let me put it like this. Yuji and Megumi could literally get free shots on both of these characters, and nothing in this series would suggest that their attacks would do much more than scratch them. For all those doubtful of that claim, let me ask you this. What have Megumi and Yuji done that is as strong, if not stronger in attack potency than Yuta's full power attack with Rika, or even just the combined punching power of Rika and Yuta? Two characters, mind you, who can stop a Granite Blast with their bare hands. In Megumi's case, the best thing you can argue for is Divine Dog, which is honestly just a laughable option in the face of these characters' overwhelming might. It's just not gonna work. But maybe you think that Yuji pulls off a Black Flash and he could critically injure the two if he does. And while this is a much more plausible attack strategy than anything Megumi can offer in this fight just based on pure striking power, Black Flash not only isn't a tool that Yuji can pull out in combat like that, but even if he could, it would be quite the stretch to assume that he could go from doing no damage to putting them near death with a Black Flash or two. Even with Mahito, Yuji had to imbue 100% of his cursed energy into the Black Flash, and Mahito was already falling apart from the damage he received earlier, meaning that unless you think Yuji has both the time to charge the attack and the speed to land that charged attack, Black Flash would not be a great option in this fight. All that being said, no matter how you slice it, if Yuji and Megumi take the combative option, neither of these two characters are leaving the Culling games in anything but a body bag. They're slower, they're weaker, they're less durable, and overall, they just don't match up to the overwhelming power that these Sendai Colony combatants have. All things considered, Yuji and Megumi not pulling up to Sendai Colony was a blessing because they currently are not built for what that area has to offer them fighting-wise. In all honesty, they're not built for anything outside of Tokyo Colony 1, and they're barely equipped for what they fought in there. Both Yuji and Megumi are too physically inferior for that, and in Yuji's case, he has absolutely no form of hacks to deal with characters like Uro and Kurushi. I will say that even though I saw two of my favorite characters getting stomped out here, this was definitely a fun hypothetical scenario to go over, and if you want to see more Jujutsu Kaisen content from me like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you are notified when I upload. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.